You see, for the past several months, I've been doing quite a good deal of research and study on the subject of, well, I call it industrial medicine. I've been trying to find out what's already been done by others. It's been most revealing, and I might add, at times, a bit discouraging. As I said, the idea isn't exactly new. People have been trying to do something about industrial medicine for hundreds of years. Only, for the most part, very little progress has been made.
But now the states are passing these workmen's compensation laws. That takes care of it, doesn't it?
No, not exactly, Mr. Gregg. Industrial medicine stresses the preventive side of sickness and accidents in the factories, the mines, and the mills.
Dr. Randall, as far as we're concerned here in this plant, just what would you propose, specifically?
I've worked out a rather complete program. I think this would be a good start. First, the program would include a complete physical examination for every employee, a permanent and well-equipped first aid station in the plant. Third, there should
Just
also
a minute. You know, we're running a factory here, not a hospital. I'm afraid your ideas are a little too ambitious for us, Doctor.
I'm sorry, gentlemen. I only...
Now, hold on, Sam. One or two of the suggestions you have here are well worth considering, Doctor. In other words, I think we can go along at least part way with you. Anyway, for a start. Now, here's what I suggest. Beginning next Monday morning, you'll make regular calls here at the plant. Say from 10 to 12. And we'll fix up a place for you to work. And I think there's merit in this idea of the first aid station. Don't you, Sam?
Well, it might work out as a good investment at that. Save a lot of production time and keep the men on the job.
And as far as examinations are concerned, well, we'll talk about that later. What do you say, Doctor?
All I can say is it's a big step in the right direction. And now, gentlemen, if you'll excuse me, I have a few calls to make.
Of course. Good day, Doctor.
Good day.
Doctor?
That's Dad. Now, Ken, whatever you do, don't talk about your industrial medicine during dinner.
Okay, sweet, I won't start an argument.
You've decided against my advice. You're going to be Kenneth Randall, the factory doctor.
Well, I'll admit it doesn't sound very fancy.
Well, does that mean that you're giving up your practice? Just as you're beginning to make a name for yourself?
Certainly not. I'm merely going to expand. I'll only be at the factory for a few hours each morning.
Expand in a factory? What about your regular patients? You can hardly expect them to come to a doctor who's out wrapping sore fingers in a factory.
Dad, you don't seem to see what it is I'm trying to do.
It's what you call industrial medicine. Yes, I know. All very fine and noble. But that's not the job for you. Leave it for someone else who can pay the price. You concentrate on being a good surgeon.
What do you mean, pay the price?
But do you realize what people will say? They'll call him an unethical incompetent who couldn't get by in private practice. That's what they'll say.
There's nothing unethical about the work of a good factory doctor. You know that, Dad.
I do not. In my personal opinion, the whole idea is unethical.
Why? Because you think it's new, untried?
Not only that, you'd be working with some other doctor's patients. You couldn't steal them all away.
That's not fair, Dad. I'd never interfere with another doctor's private practice, and you know it.
Well, yes. But I'd be the only one who does know it. And here's something else. You or no other man can serve two masters.
What do you mean by that remark?
You can't be loyal to your patients and at the same time be loyal to the man who's paying you a salary. And believe me, there'll be many times when you'll have to make decisions based on that very thing. Oh, but you never even thought about that.
No, I haven't thought about that. I haven't had to.
Well, you will. Mark my words.
But when I do, my first allegiance will be to my patients, to humanity, to the community.
What about Duncan and his stockholders? Don't forget, they'll be paying you. You'll be working for them.
I don't consider it that way.
Well, then on top of everything else, you're not even being honest with yourself.
Oh, yes, I am. By basing my decisions on what's best for my patients, the community, and then the plant, in the long run, I'll do a better job of serving Mr. Duncan and the stockholders. Don't just see, Dad. I sincerely believe in the idea of industrial medicine. Not only in this town, but in thousands of plants all over the country.
Well, that's not up to you to worry about. That's up to the men who run the factory.
No, you're wrong, Dad. Industry wants help. They don't want just surgical repairmen. They want...
Don't say anything more. I can see that you're determined, in spite of my disapproval and disappointment. And nothing I can say will dissuade you.
And this was only the first of the many bitter disappointments, conflicts, and sacrifices that came to the young doctor who had made his decision to become an industrial physician. Most of the conflict, like the basis of all trouble, was just misunderstanding. In the beginning, the workers themselves resented the physical examinations, and many submitted only under protest. Some of the foremen were short-sighted and resisted special job placement recommendations for handicapped employees. They said,
I'll let him stick to his pill.
We'll run the plant.
We'll place them in or we decide.
and while time solved most of the old problems, it also brought many new ones. For instance, there were cases where a man was suddenly taken sick on the job. Naturally, he was brought to the doctor in the plant.
What happened, boys?
I don't know, he just fainted.
Okay, thanks.
This is when the health record made out at the time of employment examination proved its value as an aid in diagnosis. But here, the illness had no relation to the job. Treatment in this case was outside the responsibility of the plant doctor. This was a case for the employee's private physician, providing the man had one. Yes, this was a problem. Often, too, the man would say,
You know all about my case, Doc. You're here all the time. You might as well continue the treatment.
I'm afraid not.
and if the doctor did take the case, he was accused of using his factory job to acquire patients for his own private
Right,
practice.
Doctor.
Call him an unethical incompetent. He'll never be able to steal them all. You or no other man can serve two masters. That thing.
But then, gradually, things began to work out a little more smoothly. The workers and their families began to recognize the true benefit and respond to the sincerity, the medical skill, the ethical practices, civic cooperation, and the good judgment of the factory doctor. And even the other doctors in town were beginning to realize that instead of stealing patients away, Dr. Randall was actually sending more and more of them to their own physicians. They gradually realized that Dr. Randall was not only improving the health conditions in the factory, but working for the benefit and general health of the community as a whole. Slowly, the cloud of misunderstanding was beginning to lift. But then came 1914. So, like thousands of other young physicians, Kenneth Randall answered his country's call.
Why, you sure look fine, Doc. And we're mighty glad to have you back.
It goes without saying that I'm glad to be back.
Well, it took the war to make us realize that industrial medicine represents another one of the many major problems that we manufacturers still have to solve. Our medical center was busier than ever before while you were away. Miss McDonald did an excellent job, too. She's a mighty fine nurse.
Yes, she is. I'd like to keep her on. Maybe full time. Because if it's all right with you, Mr. Duncan, from now on, during most of the time I do spend here in the plant, I want to concentrate on the industrial hygiene phase. There's a big job to be done in that field.
He used to stay up till all hours of the night studying books on the causes and prevention of occupational diseases, and even books on factory engineering. He spent a lot of time visiting different plants in all parts of the state, studying the health conditions of the workers, taking samples of dust, of oil, bringing them back to his little office laboratory, making chemical analyses, experimenting. Later on, he made speeches and read papers on the history of occupational diseases to gatherings of industrialists and physicians. And Father, Ken has made a success of his life and the work he wanted to do. Why, today he's considered almost an authority on industrial medicine.